Welcome to 1313 Mockingbird Lane, 2024, a vintage Halloween playlist crawl. It begins here in Philadelphia with me, Monica of Up All Night DIY, then we'll head out to the Midwest to see what magic Dawn of Shabby Meets Bling conjures up for us. Welcome to Up All Night DIY. I'm Monica. Thanks for joining me. And this wee fella here, he's the clay version of one of my all-time favorite projects, so let's get into it. We'll need a 2.4 and a 2.8 foam ball, some Model Magic, or any clay that you prefer, and a couple of toothpicks to get us started. Right, so the first thing I'm going to do is tap a flat spot on my smaller ball. And then I'll tap a flat spot on the top and the bottom of our larger foam ball. You can cut spots too. This is just a little tidier. I'm doing this so that we can stack the balls on top of each other, like this. Now we grab a big old handful of our clay, and we're going to condition it by kneading it. This will make the clay more pliable. Then I'm going to roll my clay out, nice and flat. I want it big enough to cover my foam ball. And I'm going to start with the small ball, his head. I lay the clay over the top of the ball, and I'm going to press it so that it sticks to the foam. And I'll cinch it at the bottom, and we'll cut off any excess. I do roll it on the table throughout the process to help the clay both to stick better and also to smooth it out. So we're going to cut this extra off, and once again I'll roll it around on the table to smooth it. So now I'm going to use a clay tool handle, you could use a paintbrush handle too, to make grooves to mimic the ribs of the pumpkin. And I'm going to leave a couple inches, a space there in between the grooves, probably about 2 inches I would say. That's where we're going to paint on his face. I also add a single groove down the back of the foam ball, to complete the pumpkin look. You feel me? And you know the deal. I cover the larger ball the same way that I covered the smaller one. I'm going to use a couple of toothpicks to anchor their head to the body. I'm just pushing them in the center of the body, and then we'll push the head into place. I roll a thin log of clay, which we're going to use to fill the gap between his head and body. This will secure the two pieces. And I'm just going to force it in there with my fingers, and then I'll incorporate the clay by rolling over it with my clay tool. You can use a paintbrush handle for this too. You've seen me do it before, right? So I'm going to smooth that out so that it kind of looks like it's all one piece of clay. I roll out a wee ball of clay to pop on his chin. I'm going to push it on, shape it a wee bit with my fingers, and then I'll incorporate it with the other clay. And I think this chin will kind of give the appearance of one of the ribs too. You know what I mean? So now I roll a thicker log of clay. This is going to be his arms. I'll cut this in half lengthwise, and I'll push his arms into place. I'm really hoping that you can see how simple this really is to make. These are just basic shapes that most of us have probably done while baking or cooking. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you guys. My allergies have been so bad for the past few weeks. I hope you all are doing better than me. Now I'm going to take a handle and roll it over that back part of the arm to make sure it's nice and incorporated with the other clay. And if you're wondering why I'm switching between my ball clay tool and handle, it's really just to show you that you don't need special tools. I think that's pretty good. Onward. Okay, so now I'm going to take a wad of clay and I'm going to shape it into like a biscuit. So this is going to be his legs. I really just want somewhere to put his sneakers. So, yeah, we're just going to roll this out, a ball, and I'm going to flatten it into a biscuit shape. So now I'm just going to stick that right to the bottom of him and kind of shape it with my fingers, but that looks pretty good, I think. And I'll do a wee touch of incorporating the clays together. I'm not going to be too fussy with this, just as long, as they're well stuck together. That's my main thing. I'll roll a ball of clay to make his feet, and I'll cut it in half. Like so. and we have cute wee feet. Now I've pushed them right onto the front of the legs section, the biscuity section, and I'll do a little bit of incorporating, and then we're going to set him aside to dry overnight. He's all dry and ready for paint. So I'm going to give his face and his hands 2 coats of Ceramcoat Bittersweet Orange. Actually, I'm going to wait to paint his hands a little later, but that's the color I'll be using. His pants get 2 coats of Hippo Grey. Of course they do. 2 coats of Ceramcoat charcoal for his Snickers. His shirt's going to get 2 coats of Ceramcoat white. Even though the clay is white, I prefer to paint it. It gives it a more finished look, and it's easier to add details. You know what I'm saying? A couple of white stripes across the front of his sneakers, you know, to look like soles. So now I come in and paint his hands with the Bittersweet Orange. Now we'll move on to the details. I'm going to dot on his eyes with charcoal. And I'll paint in his wee nose. It's going to be a tiny little triangle right dead set between his 2 eyes. And I'm just using like a really thin liner brush here. I think this is a 000. It's the thinnest one I have. Maybe not. No, it actually looks a little bigger. Maybe it's a 1. Anyway, I painted a triangle for his nose. I also gave his eyes some character lines, and he got a couple of eyebrows, and now we're going to dip dot on some buttons to the front of his shirt, also in charcoal. He's going to get just a basic mouth in white. Now we'll get into the details. Let's add an orange dot on his buttons, pull that color in, white swirls in his eyes for that hypnotic gaze. And I'll paint in his teeth with Hippo Grey. Also, let's outline his mouth with Hippo. I'll do short, quick strokes in rain gray to add checks to his pants. I'm not being too fussy here, worrying about lining them up, you know, just doing a general overall check. A couple of quick white strokes across the top of his sneakers as laces. And we're going to stripe his sleeves with spiced pumpkin, rain gray, and charcoal. And like I said, he is the clay version of the project you're going to see later in my flashback video. Now I'm going to give random dots to some of the checks on his pants, just here and there. Instead of using float medium, I'm just going to dry brush the shading on this guy, offloading most of the paint onto a paper towel so that the color will be subtle. I can always build on it until I get the depth of color that I want. So I'm starting in the grooves, brushing quickly, and feathering the paint. And again, just like when I used the floating medium, I really just want to get into all the little grooves and all the details around his eyes, his nose, anywhere where there would be a shadow. I don't think I mentioned that the color that I'm using for this is Ceramcoat Amber Glow. It's a reddy orange, orangey red color. And of course we'll do his hands too. Now I'm going to come in and dry brush his shirt with Drizzle Grey. Same principles apply. I like to use this light gray whenever I'm shading white, when I'm using shades of gray. You just kind of go with your palette. Now I'm coming back to his face and hands, this time with Hippo Grey. I'm just hitting anywhere where there would be a shadow and anywhere that I really think this shading would look good. So we're going to get in there on his teeth and kind of grunge them up a wee bit. I want him to look vintage and antique. His pants and sneakers will get dusted with a blend of charcoal and black. So again, I really just want to kind of grunge him up a wee bit. Now that all the shading is done, I'm going to pounce on a coat of multi-purpose sealer. This is by DecoArt, but Mod Podge works too. I'm going to make him a little paper hat to match the hat on the original project. So this is 4 inches by 6 1/4. And what I'm going to do is fold it in half and then fold it in half again, maintaining the rectangular shape. And this second fold is really just to mark the center point. So I'm going to open that fold up, and I want to make sure that the opening is at the top and the fold is at the bottom. I'm going to fold up the corner to form a triangle, meeting that center crease, and we'll crease the ends, and then I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. So now we have a little point. I explained this in the next video too. And now I'm going to flip it over and fold up the other side so that it's level and even with the first side. That makes sense, right? If not, watch the other video. I explain it there too. Before I glue the flaps in place, I'm going to hit the edges with black ink and rusty Hinge ink, which is like an orangey color. I started off here using Fabri-Fix Glue, which is okay, but I really needed the immediate hold of hot glue, so I pulled out my hot glue gun and glued the flaps down. This was solely for saving time purposes. So now that's done, we'll set that aside for a moment, and it's time to make his bow tie. So I cut little pieces of crepe paper. I'm going to stack them on top of each other, and then we'll squish them in the center, make them look like a bow, and I'll wrap a piece of pipe cleaner around the center. I'm going to cut little fringes into the bow tie. And now to embellish his hat, I just cut a tiny little piece of festooning from one of my strands. I rolled it up on itself, and I'm just going to glue it right here on this side. I decided I want him to sit on top of this little box, so I painted the lid with charcoal, and now I'm going to Mod Podge some polka dot paper around this part of it, the box part. So I'm just going to apply some Mod Podge, and I'll line up the edge of the paper with the edge of the box and go completely around until the box is completely covered. I'm cutting slits in the paper, and I'm going to fold that paper down onto the bottom of the box, and we'll glue that into place. Now I'm going to apply a top coat of Mod Podge all over the box. Once the Mod Podge dries, I'm going to hit the edges with more of the rusty Hinge ink, and I think a little black ink too, just to grunge this up a wee bit too. Now let's glue on his bow tie. I'm doing a little bit of fabric glue and a wee dot of hot glue. And now let's add his hat to his head. So again, a little bit of fabric glue and a dot or two of hot glue for the instant grab. To put him on top of the box, more fabric glue and more hot glue. And I did add a little wooden 31 button to the front of the box, and he's done. Here's the final look. I hope you like them. I think he turned out really cute. I've been wanting to make the 3D version of the original because I just love the original so much, and I gave it away. So, here he is in the 3D. And I really hope that this encourages anybody who wants to try working with clay to do this, because it really is, when you break it down, just a couple of simple shapes. You stick it all together, and you get a wee guy. And look how cute he is. All supplies will be listed in the description box. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. Dawn of Shabby Meets Bling is up next. Then I'll be back with the original version of Dandy in my flashback video. Stay tuned. You're watching 1313 Mockingbird Lane, a vintage Halloween playlist crawl.